Have you ever planned out a really good road trip, like an extended trip that covers lots of ground? You plan your route that takes you to all these points of interest, but you also plan your route with places to eat and places to crash and sleep in, right? Because when you wake up in the morning, you're gonna eat, you're gonna pack, and then you're gonna continue along your way to the next stop. Well, this is where we find our text today. Jesus continues along his way, along his route to the next stop. Now the text starts off with the words, "Now, as they went along their way," hence the story, right? Nothing too special about that, right? Well, there kind of is. Now we gotta do a quick note here. When Luke wrote his account, it was so long that he needed 2 scrolls to hold all of his words. So scroll 1 is commonly called the Gospel according to Luke. And then scroll 2, which has the rest of it, we call the Book of Acts. So this collection is often called Luke Acts. It's like one word. Well, these 2 books are supposed to go together, just like Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6. They go together and they make one story. If you miss one or skip one, you're kind of missing out on what's going on. Now, within this double account of Luke Acts, the word for "went on their way" is actually used by Luke 55 times. That's a lot of times, right? 55 times in this gospel, and then another 39 times in Acts, so this is like a major theme. So Jesus and his followers are constantly on the move. Now this is opposed to Mark, where he only uses that word 3 times. John only uses it 16, and Matthew is like 33 times, a little bit more, but nowhere near the 94 times that Luke uses this. So this shows us not only the fact that Jesus is moving a lot, but that this movement is tied up somehow with the message that he's bringing to these people and these places. Now, how so, you may ask? Now, it's hard for us to remember that 2,000 years that separates us between Jesus' time and our time. Jesus is not attempting to start up a new organized religion called Christianity. Now, that's what happened over time. Instead, he's traveling into towns, he's meeting with people with an invitation to live a different way, counter to the way the larger political religious forces of his day are living, which tend to be bent towards maintaining power by means of both aggressive forms of violence like executions, hence the crucifixion, and then passive forms of violence like excommunications, where people actually get thrust out of their communities. Now, these power structures make what's called a standardized method of believing, behaving, and belonging. And the world powers enforce these standardizations regardless of the context of the neighborhood. So Jesus, instead of converting Jerusalem or Rome or these big major power structures and then changing the standardization of believing, behaving, and belonging into something that he approves of so then he can enforce it upon the whole world, Jesus instead travels to the villages and neighborhoods to talk with real people in the beauty and pain of their local lives, in their own place. Because what it means to live the way of Christ here in Laingsburg looks very different than what it looks like to live the way of Christ in urban Mumbai or rural Ethiopia. So Jesus travels to help people find the expression of faith in their context. And today he travels to a certain village and to a friend's house, and he visits 2 ladies named Mary and Martha. Let's see what's going on with them. Okay, awkward passage here where Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet. Okay, to sit at one's feet sounds very degrading. Sorry, there's no room here at the table. You're gonna have to sit on the floor. Now, in our society, this action would be very degrading, absolutely. But again, let's remember that we are foreigners when we visit the stories of the scriptures. We don't get to appropriate them into our culture by taking our questions, our values, and then superimposing them upon the stories that we find there. We have to visit these stories on their terms and see if they address our questions at all. And hopefully we find new questions as well, maybe some answers for our questions. We'll see. So let's look at this awkward passage. Jesus is hanging out and someone's at his feet. So Jesus's feet, this is actually mentioned quite a bit in Luke, Jesus's feet. And a lot of things happen at, quote, the feet of Jesus. In chapter 7, a woman who was identified as a sinner of some kind and whom the Pharisees absolutely disapprove of comes into the house where Jesus is and anoints his feet with perfume. Now this act from someone the standardized religious folks have excommunicated from belonging initiates a few things that then happens at Jesus' feet, which is absolutely nuts that this is the initiation of something. So what happens next? That was chapter 7. Chapter 8 is a man inhabited by a legion of demons who runs around naked in a cemetery. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Now it would be hard to find a taboo that this man did not embody. Jesus goes over the lake to find him, heals him, and when the town comes out to see what happened, they find this man fully healed and seated where? At the feet of Jesus. Now the next story is about Jairus, an official of the synagogue, a well-respected religious leader. Now his daughter is sick to the point of death, and he falls down at Jesus' feet to beg for mercy. His daughter finds healing. Now the next story is out of chapter 10, and it's our text for today, where Mary is seated at Jesus' feet, learning from him. Now this place was usually reserved for male disciples. So the first thing I noticed out of these episodes, honor is being shown to those society would have no place for. Now the sinful woman, the pagan demoniac, and then the quiet Mary all have honored positions at Jesus' feet, while the synagogue leader, Jairus, prostrates himself before Jesus' feet. Now, the mother of Jesus sings a song when she learns of becoming the mother of the Messiah earlier in this book, and in it she said, God has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away. And let's not forget that Mary sits at the feet of Jesus here because Martha welcomed Christ into her home. So in Acts 22, the apostle Paul talked about being trained at the feet of the great rabbi Gamaliel. So to sit at the feet of a rabbi is a cultural honor. And Jairus, the synagogue leader, lays down before the feet of Christ. But these lowly ones, according to the standardized way of belonging, have positions of honor and dignity in fulfillment of the very song that lowly Mary, the mother of Jesus, sang. The theme here is that God has sided with those the worldly powers would write off and excommunicate. The church is really good at getting itself tangled up in power structures of the world, especially political ones, because we want to standardize our way of believing and behaving and then enforce it upon the world. And here it is often the people we consider the lowly that come to rescue us from our own pride and lust for power. We want to standardize our way of believing, behaving, and belonging by use of power so much that it becomes oppressive. And as usual, those on the outside of that, they usually reach in and save us from ourselves. Now, one of my favorite books is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, early in that book, Bilbo Baggins is invited by Gandalf the Wizard on an adventure to a mountain to recapture a treasure from a dragon. It's a great story. But hobbits like to stay at home and drink tea and eat bacon, so Bilbo is torn. Hey, I can relate because I like to stay at home and drink tea or coffee and eat bacon. Now, Gandalf has invited 13 dwarves for whom the treasure belongs into Bilbo's home. And then they all show up and Bilbo has to feed them and clean up after them and listen to their stories and songs about their treasure. And now today's passage kind of reminds me of this scene from The Hobbit where Bilbo is frantically trying to take care of all these hobbits. But it's like Martha is Bilbo Baggins and the disciples are the dwarves invading her home, eating her food, dirtying her dishes, sleeping in her guest rooms. I guess that makes Jesus like Gandalf. No complaints here. That's cool. So Martha is distractedly running around trying to get all this work done, and Mary's just kind of sitting there at the feet of Jesus listening to him teach. Now, the word distracted here in the Greek is fun. It's the only time in the whole Bible that it's used. And it's a compound word made of two Greek words, peri, which means concerning, about, or because of. And the second word is spau, which kind of sounds fun when you say it, which means to draw your sword. So the picture of distraction is like mental sparring. You know, a concern comes in and you attack it, only to be hit over the back of your head with a different concern you forgot about but just remembered, and then you turn and attack that one. It's like it's a Bruce Lee fighting scene in your mind, except, you know, all the bad guys are the concerns in your, and they're just crowd around ready to jump on you and draw your mental swords, and you're ready to fight. Like, that's what the picture is that we're supposed to get here. Now, I'm not really sure what Martha is concerned with. You know, maybe it's the Messiah is in her house. Could be. No pressure, Martha. I'm not sure. I'm sure we can all relate, right? We feel external pressure to perform and provide. And the thing is, we need to perform and provide. So why does it invade our brain like a Bruce Lee fight scene, causing us to draw our swords and then fight them all off? And then that comes from the word pressure. We feel the pressure to perform and provide, which means that we are not confident that we can perform and provide. That the weight of the whole world is upon our shoulders. So time feels like this ruthless master, ready to beat us down with deadlines and expectations. And we think that we are victims of time. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. Time is passing us by, right? But in reality, time is not happening to us. We are happening to time. What time is it? Well, it's right now. It's only ever been right now. Because 5 minutes ago, it was right now, back then. There has never been a time when it was not right now. Right now is all we've ever had. Same thing with right here. Where are you? I'm on Lake Michigan, which is right here. But I'm here talking with you, right? But I'm right here. If I go home, then what will I say when I get home again? Well, I'm right here. The present moment is the only thing we've ever been, is right here and right now. And the things that look on the horizon, they're like lurking there of the here and now, they can scare us. But when they arrive in the here and now, we face them better when we're also here and now, instead of the diluted attention that comes with our concern for the illusion of the then and there. While we can seize this right now in such a way that benefits us longer term, time is not external oppressive force upon our life. Right? If we can live in this right now with our full attention and our full authority, we could live with less frantic distraction. And that is what Martha and we as well can learn from Mary. Back in October, I was driving with my son Isaac in my tiny little red Aveo car. And we were on some country roads heading to the highway, trying to get home from church. My body was in autopilot mode for driving, and my attention was on my son and having conversation. And we were having some really good conversation when all of a sudden this huge buck jumped out into the road from the side forest. My brain took over immediately the driving, and I attempted to stop, but there was absolutely zero time to respond, and we just hit that deer, totaled my car. And Isaac said, well, at least we got to see the deer up close. Yeah, buddy, we sure did. We sure did. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, we all tend to set our lives like this, on autopilot mode. Much of the time, this is really helpful. And I don't want to have to think about how to drive my car every time I get in. I'd like my muscle memory to take over so I can listen to a cool, like, Sam Harris podcast or listen to my Imagine Dragons playlist. Don't judge, it's only a phase, I think. Or an audiobook or something like that. My brain wants to focus on these things because my body already knows how to drive. Now, if there is an emergency, then I'll pay attention again. Now, the gift that Mary is showing us is the ability to pay attention in a way that we previously were not. And then to assess the autopilot trajectory of our life and ask, is this what I want? Is this the path that I should be taking, or is it just the path of least resistance? All we really need to do is pay attention to this moment right now. We tend to take our attention and dilute it through space and time, right? We're concerned about a conversation that happened last week in Chicago. Space and time, there it is. We're worried about a flight we need to catch in 3 days. We're worried about, the the well-being of friends and loved ones. And we take our attention and we dilute it and dissipate it, all of our energies for the reality of right here and right now is diluted across space and time. And it's not that these things are unworthy of our attention. They often are. It's that we're powerless to affect them just yet. And yet they're robbing us of our ability to love the person standing right in front of us by paying attention to them, to this conversation, to that person in their interest. If you really want to challenge yourself in this, take a toddler for a walk and you will stop at every bug and every plant and every crack in the sidewalk, and you're going to be more concerned with getting to your destination than you are about enjoying the journey. And we forget what we once knew as toddlers, that how you get something determines who you are when you get it, because the journey there shapes you. So we can frantically run around and conquer our life like Martha's attempting to do. And we often do. We can often succeed at conquering our life, but it costs us something. We can sit in the here and now without any action like Mary is doing, and then let Martha do all the doing for us. But again, that costs us something too. We really aren't supposed to glorify Mary over Martha or Martha over Mary. What we're supposed to do is to take Mary's attention to Martha's action. Mary chooses the better part, because without this first step of paying attention to our lives, our actions are like dulled woodworking tools, producing splintered results and much more effort and a ton of more mental exertion and anxiety is needed. So what if we recollected ourselves back to the here and now and lived what this moment required of us in this place at this time? Maybe it's action, maybe it's reflection. Do what was required for the right now instead of sanctifying the frantic need to live in constant motion all the time. Because then we're free to love our neighbor, for we will have the attention and the capacities to do so.
We are needy people. We need attention, affection, influence. These needs are so strong that we may find ourselves arranging our lives in order to satisfy them. But this is a tragic trap, because we can never find the attention, influence, or care that really fills our needs. This leads to a life filled with tension as we seek what we cannot find. Why are we so needy? We have doubts about ourselves that cause us to feel not fully acceptable as we are. We are not at home with ourselves. From our feeling of woundedness, we become needy, and in our neediness, we wound others. The gospel breaks through this chain of interlocking needs and wounds. The great message of Jesus is that God loves us first, and that we can love one another only because God has loved us first. Jesus calls us to come home to that first love, which precedes all human loves. This is the original blessing, the original acceptance, our original home. The Christian life means to love one another with God's love and not with the needy, wounded love that can end up harming others. By Henry Nouwen.
Well, hey, thank you so much for joining me in my office today online in this digital space. I hope you found a little bit of hope, help, and healing. I got a couple of fun blooper reels after this here, so go ahead and stay tuned, because it's a lot of fun to watch me mess up and trip over my own tongue sometimes. If you found this service helpful and you identify with kind of the spirit of the teaching here, there are some ways that you can partner with us. You can like our page on Facebook or Instagram to stay tuned in to our online services that release every Sunday, as well as see a breakdown of these services into smaller bite-sized pieces on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You can also subscribe on YouTube if you want to catch these early. I think we post these sometime around Thursdays or Fridays, and you can watch them at your leisure. And if you want to leave any comments down below, let us know how you're doing. It actually helps others find us by triggering all those unseen internet algorithm thingies that are out there. If you're an exile from the faith community and you've not found a spiritual home yet, you can hang out with us because we like you. And if you are in a dark night of the soul or a deconstruction of your faith process, you just reach out and I can walk you through as a spiritual director, guide you through the dark and show you how that your faith can work in this dark time. And if you'd like to partner with us financially, there is a way for you to give. There is a link that comes up on the bottom of your screen and you can just type that in, send us a one-time gift. We'd appreciate it. You can partner with us on a month-by-month basis if you want. Sign up for that. We would appreciate any help to keep these services going. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us today. And we'll see you on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then again on next Sunday. So peace out. I'll catch you later. But I just want to give a special shout out to Norma. I'm going to take off my hat for you, Norma. Take 3. We're going to check that out today. I'm going to redo that. Next stop, well, this is still too fast. Named Mary and Martha.